Hello, my name is Father Lawrence Jagfeld. I am a Franciscan friar of the Sacred Heart Province, headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, and the administrator of CUSA, an apostolate of persons with chronic illness and/or disability. The fifth Sunday of Easter continues our reflection on the Acts of the Apostles, on the book of Revelation, and the Gospel of St. John. As we listen to the Gospel today, the first thing that we notice is that Jesus speaks a great deal about glory. When Judas had left them, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and God will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment. Love one another, as I have loved you. So you also should love one another. This is how all will know you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." By and large, Americans, Westerners, are not at all concerned about the notions of shame, dishonor, or glory and honor. As we look at public life in these United States, most of us can recognize that politicians, athletes, people of every walk of life are oftentimes found in very shameful situations. And yet, despite the shame of the moment, they move on and in some cases even get to the point where they were when they ran into the shameful situation. Politicians are re-elected to office even though they are under indictment for crimes. Sports figures are elevated to the halls of fame or halls of honor for their individual sport, even though they may have an asterisk behind their name because they have done something that would tarnish the game. It just is a matter of our culture that we just simply are not all that interested in shame or dishonor. So how are we to understand this gospel, which begins with a hymn to the question of glory and glorification? Yes, it is a hymn. St. John has literally lifted the hymn right out of the Christian community's liturgical practices and inserted it into the gospel and put it in the mouth of Jesus. We have to understand that this culture was driven by the opposite of honor and shame, that it was driven by the quest for preserving honor and avoiding shame at all cost. Of course, Jesus died a very ignominious death, and by that I mean Jesus' death was a very shameful situation. And it is, without a doubt, one of the things that the early Christian community had to deal with as it reflected on the life, passion, death, ministry, and eventual resurrection of Jesus. They had to deal with the question of this dishonor. And the way they dealt with it was by recognizing that God bestowed a higher honor on Jesus because of his willingness to obey. Immediately after this hymn, Jesus launches into this new commandment. Now, anybody who has studied the scriptures realizes that it really isn't new. Even as far back as the book of Genesis, when Isaac was speaking to his sons, Jacob and Esau, when he was giving his farewell address, much the same way Jesus is doing in this particular chapter of John's Gospel, he told his sons that they should love one another as they loved themselves. So this isn't really a new commandment so much as it is a more universal commandment, because the commandment to love one another was usually reserved to people in one's family, in one's community. Jesus here is in fact asking us to love everyone who is part of our world, to extend to them the love that God has shown to us. So while the commandment is not really new, its application is new. And it is in this context that we have to understand our own quest for honor, our own quest for glory. By this shall all know that you are my disciples. By this we shall be identified with Jesus. And by being identified with his person, we will also be identified with his glory. For more information about CUSA, please visit our website at www.cuson.org.